Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club Podcast, where every month we deep dive into a different aspect of cinema. Directors, genres, actors, or franchises. It doesn't matter, because it's always fun at the Film Club. I'm Dean.
I'm Boo.
And this month we're going through the filmography of Ed Wood Jr. And this week we're talking about
Bride of the Monster.
That's right, Bride of the Monster, 1955, stars Bela Lugosi and Tor Johnson. It is his second movie? Sixth movie? Third movie?
I'd say it's probably his second feature film. There was, I think, a Western, there was a TV series, and there was like a after-school kind of special movie.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the next one in line. And I think it had the highest budget.
That explains a lot.
Until they ran out of money.
Until they ran out of money, right? But that explains a lot with this movie because comparatively to Glen or Glenda, this is a much more structured film.
Well, I mean, Glen or Glenda was more of like an art installation where you're kind of just vibing and feeling the art.
The art.
And then this is just a horror movie.
Yeah, and it's a pretty decent, like, B horror film, right? We get, like, Bela Lugosi doing the mad scientist bit. We get
Tor Johnson as the creature.
Mm-hmm.
We have an octopus.
I'm a little weirded out with the octopus, but cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie, or I guess this episode, is also special because it's our 200th episode.
That's right.
So stay tuned for after the outro. We'll talk a little bit about 200 episodes and what it took to get here, and why Dean sounds like death right now in this episode.
It's because you don't listen.
I know.
Rest, Dean, rest. No, I must work.
I must work for the people. I must perform for the audience.
And then it was his final episode.
Who knew?
We'll miss him.
We'll miss the old boy. But yeah, so Bride of the Monster. This movie, off the bat, I would say is a better film than Glen or Glenda as a film. Not as like a piece of art. Like Glen or Glenda I feel is much more personal to like Ed Wood as a filmmaker. Because like that's the crux of this whole month is asking the question, was Ed Wood actually a bad director? And I think this is probably the best showing of him as a director up to this point. Of he could have worked just making these B horror films if you gave him even a monochrome of a budget.
I mean, even Glen or Glenda, had he cut out just the randomness that was put into it, and it was just a drama with Glenn struggling with, wanting Glenda to be, basically his identity.
Mm-hmm.
You had a movie there. That was a drama. That was, engaging. It was just everything else that was tossed in there that was like, what is going on?
Yeah, that one felt very muddled and very lost in the exploitativeness of the idea.
And it's like with this one, it's just a through and through horror movie. I mean, we get some things repeated, but it flows like a film does.
It also has a very like harkeny back kind of aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
We have the old Willow's place, the old haunted house. We have literal Bela Lugosi playing a mad scientist in this. I mean, I love how this movie starts, where it's just two hunters, it's raining, it's dark and dreary night.
I purposely watched this at midnight because I wanted to feel like I was up late watching some B movies and just, enjoying the moment. And that's what I got out of it.
I mean, that feels like how you're supposed to enjoy these kinds of movies is late at night, like very, like in the drive-through aesthetic. You're just supposed to watch them really late. You're supposed to have like a couple of sodas and a popcorn and just like vibe on them. They're not supposed to be great works of cinema. They're supposed to keep your attention for an hour plus, right? Mm-hmm. But the way this movie starts is like so much fun because, the 200's like, oh man, I don't know if we'll ever be able to make it out of here. Well, we can go to the old Willow's place. The old Willow's place, that place is, haunted or whatever.
It's abandoned.
It's abandoned.
The monster lives there.
Oh, don't tell me you believe in the monster. I love this, like, really kitschy, campy B-movie dialogue, which I think is unique to the Ed Wood auteurism, because his dialogue, even in Glen or Glenda, is very campy, I guess. Like, it kind of reminded me a little bit of, like, the James Whale stuff, just to, like, a different extent, because even in, like, Frankenstein or Bride of Frankenstein or The Invisible Man, they dialogue is a little bit campy or exaggerated.
But the James Whale dialogue is so iconic. I mean, how many lines can you rattle off from his movies? And in this one, I was kind of like waiting. I was waiting for something that was going to be like, that's going to be the line that, you know, that I repeat. I mean, I did my research before.
Mm-hmm.
I saw, you know, the whole shtick with, you know, people saying, oh, Bella flubbed his line, you know, he's as gentle as a kitchen. And I'm like, I gotta see this.
Yeah.
And then I watch it, I'm like, no, he clearly says kitten. So I'm like, so people were right that they were seeing older cuts of it. And, you know, it just sounded like kitchen. Because I wanted to be like, yeah, anytime. Yeah, he's as gentle as a kitchen. And I was just like, no, he says he's as gentle as a kitten.
Yeah.
So it's not up there with We Belong Dead, Friend Good.
It's a thing where that gets to an interesting point, right? Because the reason why people think Ed Wood's the worst director of all time, or why his movies are the worst of all time, is because of those like Golden Turkey Awards, right? Where I think those were like a book series or something back in like the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, Plane 9 from Outer Space is the worst movie ever made, and Ed was the worst director of all time. But really, those guys didn't do a lot of research. They were basically putting together a book of what was on old, like, late-night movie channels, which were just running old B movies from the 50s, right? Because this was in 1980. There wasn't, like, a huge video market for bad movies. At least none in the degree that we think of now. And I think it's a little unfair, because it's like, you just watch, like, an old, bad transfer of Bride of the Monster, and you're like, man, this dialogue is bad because Bela Lugosi can't say kitchen, he says, or can't say kitten, he says kitchen. He does. I wonder if that's a reason why people think Ed Wood's dialogue is bad, is because it was just transferred to hell on old VHS copies, and the audio just got bad.
I mean, let alone, we do have one scene that I will gripe with, and, you know, I saw it last night, and I'm like, okay, that's something that caught my focus. The police station.
Oh, okay, yes.
When he's panning, and it's like you can see that like either the operator tripped or the camera jerked, and it was just like, oh, this is, you would have just, you know, okay, cut, roll it back, film it again, instead of, you know, no, we're good, keep going.
Yeah, like, I guess that is a thing, because Ed Wood had a reputation of being very fast. Because his movies, I think he took like 3 days to shoot this movie.
Yeah, I was trying to look through my notes to see where it was, because I think it said in here it took 3 to 4 days to make this, which is kind of hard to believe.
Well, it's not that many sets in the grand scheme of things, like when we really think about it.
It's not, but a lot's going on. I mean, we have our reporter who is doing her job and then goes missing, and then, you know, she is held captive and she's ready to be operated on, and we have, you know, the fiance lieutenant that's looking for her and, you know, working this case, and we've got the mad scientist as well that's doing his own things, and then we've got
the professor that comes to confront
Freud that comes in.
There's a lot of things going on with this movie, and I think it's interesting.
That's why it made no sense. Like, how could you get this done in 4 days?
Well, I think it's just because, I mean, let's be honest, like, from that track-in shot, there was probably only 1 or 2 takes of everything.
Yeah, I guess. It's just, you know, it's not like you have 2-3 people in the cast. You've got a healthy cast.
Yeah, and the thing is with the cast is also, like, okay, I won't say the cast is, like, great, but this is probably one of Lugosi's better performances, at least for this stage of his career.
Well, that, and we also get him for the most time in this. It's not like Dracula where we only get him, you know, in pieces of it. This is where we more or less get him from start to finish.
And we get him, and he's playing Dr. Vornoff, right? And Lobo's like his
creation, his experiment.
Is that the vibe we're supposed to get?
Well, I mean, he's the mad scientist. He's trying to make, you know, a world full of supermen.
Atomic supermen.
And I'm like, that sounds like something that Dean would like in his life.
Just be a mad
scientist. A league of supermen.
I mean, it'd be interesting. You know, good to have in your back pocket just in case. But
a little radioactive and
larger
than life and might, break things, but it's okay.
We're going to talk about Lobo breaking things when we get to the fight near the end. He was Tor Johnson was working stiff that night. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, that was a good fight.
That was a rough one for that guy. Oh Lord. But we get like the opening of the movie, right? The hunters go to like hide out in the old Willow's place, and they discover that
it's better to be drenched than to be barbecued.
Exactly.
And the other guy's like, fuck that. We're going to go stay in the old haunted house. And if the monster gets us, he gets us.
But do they find the monster? No. They find Bela fucking Lugosi.
I'd be fangirling so hard.
He'd be like, oh my God, Dracula. Oh my God.
I love you.
Sign my face.
And he'd be like, come in for an experiment. I mean, milk and cookies.
Oh, God.
I'd be like, okay.
Boo, don't get into the van. Bela Lugosi's not in there.
I don't get into the van for a lot of reasons. But, classics, universal monsters, yeah, that'll get me.
Sometimes Frankenstein's in the van.
Sometimes. Sometimes he needs a friend. I will befriend.
Oh, Lord. I really hope no one's listening and going to try and kidnap you by telling you there's the Wolfman and Frankenstein in the back of their panel van.
I eat too well. No one's lifting me and tossing me into a van.
Wow.
I know what I said.
Lordy.
I'm a hefty gal.
Mm-hmm. So, the hunters are pleading, and Lugosi's like, "No, go away! I'm Dracula." Blah blah. And then he finally sicks Lobo on them, and they run off.
Well, I mean, Lobo, he just kind of appears and he's ready to kill, and he's like, "No, let them go. They think I'm the monster. They think you're the monster.
They think you're the monster.
But really, society is the monster."
We'll get into that.
Yes, we will.
So they run off, and I believe this is where we see the mad scientist laboratory, and Vornoff, Lugosi's character, watches through a little porthole into the lake of some octopus stock footage.
Yeah.
And then an octopus kills these two hunters.
Well, he kills one.
Lobo gets the other.
So it's a tag team match.
No, true. Also, I find it interesting, this mad scientist layer. It vibed very strongly of 60s Batman to me. Again, I get
Again, this came out in the 50s, so now you know where 60s Batman may have been inspired.
Maybe.
Young Frankenstein, where we have, the secret passageway.
Possibly. But it's a thing where I get a very interesting sense of a distinct sense of camp in the Ed Wood canon. This one especially, I feel there is a campy element to it. There's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek, like, guys, we all kind of know this is funny, but let's get behind it, all right? Like, enjoy the goofiness of it.
Yeah, it's not, like horror movies today where it's like, this is terrifying. I am sleeping with the lights on for weeks, if I even sleep. This is meant to have fun.
It's the James Whale aesthetic, right?
It's like, okay, we've got the monsters, we've got the good guys, and then we have, like, society of the people, because in my book, monsters are usually the good guys.
Well,
Yeah.
That's what the literature has always told us.
Exactly.
But I'm so confused why it's an octopus as the monster. Just
Salvador Dali, rhinoceros. Why was it a rhinoceros? I don't know. We'll never know.
What the fuck is that?
You gotta watch Midnight in Paris.
Oh God.
You need to watch it. It is such a good movie.
That's all this episode is gonna be, is Boo telling me to watch more Woody Allen films.
Hey, you enjoyed A Movable Feast.
They
were friends.
I enjoyed the book.
But an octopus, who knows? Who knows if it's, something from Ed's mind, if it was just something that he saw in the prop house and was like, fuck it, I want that octopus.
Could have just been, this is the stock footage I have available.
And then, oh hey, you happen to have a gigantic octopus in your warehouse. I'll take that.
Yeah. Oh, God, because when the hunters are being eaten by the octopus, you can kind of tell, like, the tentacle things are just being, like... there's somebody off-screen just waving them around. they're kind of, it's a little bit of a cheap
You're
effect.
kidding. I thought it was gripping, I was clutching my pearls like those poor men, or that poor man. I think his name was Mac. Will he survive?
I can't wait for when we talk about when Professor Stosky gets killed by this octopus. That man should have won an Oscar for being attacked by this octopus.
Can I just jump to a spoiler ahead of time?
Oh, why not?
It's our 200th. So, clearly, the mad scientists, they always get it.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to see the octopus getting Dr. Eric.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Vornoff.
I mean, I feel like we're, on a first name basis here.
Okay.
But, he gets Dr. Vornoff. And in Ed Wood, the Tim Burton movie, it's Bella rolling around with the octopus. And then I was doing my research, and they're like, it wasn't Bella, it was a stunt man. I'm like, I refuse to believe it. And then we get to that scene, and they're like, fuck, that is a stunt man. Like, damn it.
Yes, because Bela Lugosi's in his 70s in this movie?
I know, but it was so good in Ed Wood, the movie. I was like, I could see Bella doing that.
Oh, God. Well...
And the fact that it was filmed in Griffith Park.
Yeah.
I want to go to the exact spot and roll around on the ground.
They broke a dam and flooded out an area of the park just so they could film that. And I'm like, guys, that is like that's like really illegal.
Don't act like you wouldn't try to pull that, you and your friends making movies.
No, it would save some money on the budget. I mean, hey. But it is again, the movie these Ed Wood films have a sense of a homemade quality to them. Mm-hmm. This one does as well because that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they just flooded out a part of Griffith Park to make the lake or whatever. And it's like...
Who's going to know? It's really dark up there. It's secluded.
Yeah. And
who's going to hear him screaming with the octopus?
Exactly. It's like you're obviously filming this in the middle of the night so you can get away with it so the cops don't run you off. It is a fascinating way to make movies, especially in 55. That's something you would hear about in the 60s or 70s, not in the fucking 50s. But we get the whole Lugosi reveal. He captures one of the hunters. He's going to experiment on him, but the experiment fails because he's not strong enough to be an atomic Superman.
Either you become atomic Superman, or you dead.
You dead. And
then I like when he dies, and then Dr. Vornoff is shocked. He died. And it's like, well, you kind of gave him the two options.
He didn't want to be atomic Superman.
I mean, that's a lot of responsibility.
So much responsibility. And this is where we go into the police station. And we get to meet Kelton the cop and the chief of police with his bird.
Kelton is so thirsty.
Oh, yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Kelton the cop
sir.
is a recurring for those who don't know, is a recurring character in the Ed Wood canon. He shows up again, I believe, in Plan 9 from Outer Space, and he shows up again in it's like the sequel to Bride of the Monster or whatever, but he is a Don Knotts type that shows up a lot in the Ed Wood filmography. And he is not the most ridiculous person in the scene. I think the fact that the chief of police, we see him just feeding his little bird on his shoulder, and I'm like, why is there a little parakeet vibing in the room with the chief of police? What is this?
Look, I have a fear of birds. I've heard, it's a thing. Intellectuals are also, scared of birds.
Uh-huh.
I'm not claiming to be an intellectual. I'm just terrified of birds.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a cute bird.
It's a cute little birdie.
I would totally let it hang from my sunglasses, too, and get it cups of water. It was very sweet.
It's...
not ridiculous. Sweet.
I guess. It's a thing where it's like, that's a very particular character thing. Where I'm like, why the bird?
Maybe the actor had just bought the bird, and he was like... I'm not going to be home till later tonight. I got to hold on to this bird. All right, let's bond.
Oh, maybe I don't know, because it's a thing where again, because how films work, everything on screen is there for a quote unquote a purpose, right? So at one point, Ed Wood had to say, you know what? I like the bird. Let's get it into the shot. Those words had to have come out of Ed Wood Jr.'s mouth.
I've got a fever, and the only solution is more bird.
Those words, the only solution is more bird, came out of Ed Wood's mouth while he was making Pride of the Monster.
And then, Hitchcock, He was in England and he was like, this man, he's cooking. He's giving me some ideas.
I would love to know if Hitchcock saw Bride of the Monster. That would warm my heart so much.
We're going to have to get like a biography or something. And on this day I watched Bride of the Monsters. And boom. The Birds was born.
I watched Bride of the Monster. It's pretty good. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, that is such a very odd and particular choice to be in the film that has to be there for a reason, right?
It was just cute. It was a cute bird.
Maybe? I mean...
He's like, we need some cuteness in all of this chaos. But
yeah, the police station scene also is where we get introduced to basically the rest of the cast, right? We get introduced to Miss Lawton. She's the newspaper reporter, Sergeant Dick Craig.
Of course his name is Dick.
And they're all... This is a long scene with a lot of exposition. It's like not dull. It's 1950s-y, kind of fast dialogue.
It's just establishing everything that's going on.
Yeah, there's 12 people that got missing over at Lake Marsh.
In 3 months.
In 3 months.
We got a problem here.
I love how people are like, 12 people have gone missing over at Lake Marsh.
See?
Utter coincidence.
See?
I'm just saying, 2 people go missing over at by the old Willows place. You're not going to send a beat cop over there, knock on some doors, see what's going on?
Apparently they have. No one was home. No one answered the door.
I love how it was that easy for Dr. Vornoff to get away with this, is he just didn't answer the door. He just acted like everyone on planet Earth does. When somebody knocks on the door, you look through the peephole and you're like, oh, those are the Mormons. I'm not home right now. And you just slink off into the shadows.
I mean, I'm Hispanic, so we were raised, you don't open the door for nobody.
That's everybody, all right? I'm sorry to break it to you. That's everybody.
I don't know. You're so friendly. I think you'd open the door. You've scared people away. You've talked to, people that come to the door and you just talk and they're like, have a good day. No, wait, let me tell you some more. No, so I'm sorry. We're never coming back.
Oh, the best is when you out crazy the crazy people who come to your door to talk about Jesus. They, knock on the door. You open up the door. You're covered in baby oil with a chicken. And you're like, hey, are you here for the meeting? We're here to talk about, Moloch. And then they run off. And it's a great time.
That explains why it takes you so long to get ready.
I have to wash off all the peanut butter and baby oil. It's a process. Keeps my skin silky smooth, though. But yeah, 12 people have gone missing over at Lake Marsh. And it's interesting that Lawton is more invested in investigating this than the police are. And I wonder if that goes to like the Ed Wood thing where he really is pushing for the strong female character in the movie.
Because he knows that, it's usually the men that are the ones, It would be Dick that's on the case and he's out there and he's going to figure it all out. No, we want a strong woman. We want a Lois Lane that's out there, and I want the truth, damn it.
I wonder, I mean, yeah, that makes sense, but I feel that's even a trope.
We have Superman. We have Atomic Superman. We have a Lois Lane type.
It's all here. Ed Wood, huge Superman fan.
Well, I mean, you're the comic book guy. When did Superman first appear?
1938.
There you go.
Years.
It's canon.
It's canon. Look it up. But yeah, Lawton is going to look over what's going on, and we get a pretty good stunt when she's driving over because it's raining. She gets caught up in the car or whatever. We're filming inside the car, and it's a little chaotic, and she crashes it into a tree.
I mean, you're skipping over where they're not giving her any information at the police station. And she's like, I'm going to figure it out on my own. She goes back to work.
Oh, when we go to the most naturalistic actor in all of the Ed Wood canon of that newspaper catalog lady.
Tilly.
She
was my favorite.
The most naturalistic actor in any Ed Wood movie of all time. She is that woman was probably an actual newspaper historian or cataloger or something.
She's like, yeah, go ahead, make a mess. That's what they pay me for here. Sure. Oh, you don't want to meet up with your fiance tonight? Yeah, I'll call him and I'll tell him that, you've got the flu or you've got a headache. That's what I do, girl.
Straight homie, Tilly.
Yeah, so we have, Lois Lane. She finds the newspapers because she's like, okay, they're not going to give me information. But I know that home was purchased within the last 10 years. It made the news. And sure enough, she's able to find out that it's Dr. Eric Vornoff that purchased the property. And she's on the hunt, which leads us to when she crashes the car.
Yeah, which is impressive. I like the stunt because it's shot really well.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like, oh, it's a fake car that they're just, kind of moving into place.
Yeah, no, it really does look like there's somebody behind the wheel of that car just kind of plowing it right into the brush. And also how it's shot from like the inside of the car.
Yeah.
Actually has almost like a French Connection-y style like frenetic energy to it. Which, again, is also interesting to say about a movie directed by Ed Wood, right? Where it has a Friedkin level of frenetic energy to the proceedings.
He was a jack of all trades. He was an inspiration.
To many and to all. But she gets, she crashes, and then Lobo comes and, like, captures her, right?
Well, she rolls out of the car, and she's laying there, and then she sees the python that's above her, and then she faints. I don't know if I'd faint.
You'd be scared.
I'd probably scream and give myself a heart attack, and then collapse.
Yeah.
I think she handled it much, much better than I would have.
A tad, you think?
And then that's when Lobo finds her, and he loves the scent of her hat, and he's like, okay, I must protect you. Let me be your hero.
Let me be your hero, baby. Let Lobo wash away the pain. What? You're not a fan of the whatever the fuck? Sure. So Lobo goes and takes Lawton to Vornoff, right? And okay.
Vornoff's like, good.
You brought young blood for Vornoff, yes. So I'm cool with this movie up to this point, right? Like, mad scientist, he wants to do some crazy experiments, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, all of a sudden, Vornoff turns into Dracula. And
It's okay, because I loved it. We get the hands, and I was like, oh shit, we're getting the Dracula hands. And he's, he's doing his Dracula bit, and he's, calling to her.
Yes, and he, like, hypnotizes her with his eyes, and they're trying to do the effect, right? Where it's, like, just his eyes are lit up when he's doing it. Which doesn't really work in the movie.
In this movie, no.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, am I supposed to believe that Vornoff is magic now?
Yes.
Yes.
Bela Lugosi is magic, yes.
I see. So, like, it's so odd, right? Like, it comes, like, actual, like, mystical element to the proceedings, which it previously wasn't there. But I'm like, I guess it's, like, a campy vibe. Sure, whatever. Let Lugosi do Lugosi things. But right around this time, because I think Professor Strosky is introduced after Lawton leaves, but maybe before she gets captured.
Yeah, they have that scene where they're explaining that he's an expert and he's been sent to help. And Dick's, he's ready to go. He's like, let's go right now.
Yeah.
The monster comes out at night. And Freud, I'm going to call him Freud because I can't remember his name.
Strosky.
I mean, he does look like Freud a little bit.
A little bit. It's the German aristocracy or the
Russian.
Russian?
He said he was Russian.
Is he Russian? Well, okay, we're going to get into why I think he's German later when we get into the speech, but besides the point.
But yeah, he's like, oh, no, I understand. The monster comes out at night, but I just flew in. I need to rest.
Very reasonable. Very reasonable guy.
I guess. But I mean, you're a monster hunter. You'd think, you'd be game. You roll off that airplane ready to go.
Come on, Van Helsing.
Exactly. Van Helsing didn't need a nap.
I mean, Van Helsing seemed like he wanted a nap, right?
He would have napped on the plane. He was a professional.
It's true. But the reason I bring this up is because right around, like, Strosky's introduced, and then he goes to investigate the monster on his own, and he runs into Vornoff, right? And because the timeline of the movie is, like, weird in my head because a lot of things happen really quickly in succession. So Varnoff and Strosky have their, like, one-on-one after Lawton's trapped, right? She's captured. And this is where we get, like, fucking Bela Lugosi's greatest monologue in cinema.
The monologue that Ed wanted on cue cards.
Because it's a long monologue.
And I think it was another producer. He was just kind of, like, trying to negotiate with Bella and, like, please, we're just doing this, for safety, for security. And Bella was like, absolutely not. I'm
a professional, damn it.
They held up the cue cards and he made sure that he kept his head, turned away from the cue cards, and he did it.
Well, what it was they gave it to the guy, Kelton, the guy who played Kelton the cop. Yeah. And Lugosi was like, don't show them to me. I don't need them. And he was like, okay. And kind of held him down by his side. And Lugosi did the whole thing. And he got a standing ovation, right?
Because he's Bela Lugosi.
Well, here's the other interesting thing, right? This is his last speaking role.
Yes.
This is his last movie that he is, talking on camera. And, we don't really know, like, the production history of the movie. But this might very well have been his last day on set. Right, because the last...
Yeah, we don't know how if it was in succession, everything, played out the way that it did in the script, or if it was out of order.
Yeah, because even, like, once you get to, like, the last half of the movie, or maybe, like, the last chunk, most of that's a stuntman.
Yeah.
Right? So could you imagine you're Bela Lugosi, right? You've been considered, like, you were, like, the Hungarian hunk or whatever. You played Romeo on the stage, and then you were, like, I got to be Dracula, and then
on the stage and on the screen.
On the stage and on the screen, I made this iconic role, and then you kind of end up becoming typecasted, and you become considered like a wash-up, right? Like, don't get me wrong, Bela Lugosi was always a consummate professional, a very strong actor, right? But it's a thing where Hollywood kind of like let him go.
Shafted him?
Shafted him. Well, honestly, it's a thing where it's like, I can only blame Hollywood for so much because Lugosi was not a very good businessman. Like, he didn't know how to value his position and sell it like Karloff did, right? But it was a thing because Lugosi wanted to work. He wanted to act, so he didn't really care if he was a supporting or a lead kind of thing, so he would just do anything. And in that era of Hollywood, you couldn't do that because it devalued your name. So, but you also got to think, like, at this point, Lugosi is, like, people thought Lugosi was dead at this point.
Yeah, well, we have that whole thing.
So, I find it so wonderful that maybe his last performance, his last monologue, whatever,
was a
banger, and it got a standing ovation from the cast and crew, and it's a monologue that I think is so wonderful and specific to him, because it's about, like, home. I have no home. They drove me away and I can never return. Because that's really what happened. Because he kind of got ran out of Hungary after right before the war or whatever.
Or after the war.
Like, I think it was like right after World War I or something like that. But it's a thing where he really felt like a man of no country anymore. And he's talking about this. He came to America to, like, find his fortune, and what he got was a society that didn't appreciate him and all these things. And it's a beautiful monologue about him creating an atomic race of Supermen. Throw a little pizzazz in there and it works out.
That's all you guys want is atomic Supermen.
Well, just a little bit. But yeah, it's a thing where it's such a very, like, heartfelt and strong performance that you kind of look over the goofy sci-fi nature of it all.
And I mean, especially when you know the history and the context of this is his last film. Because, I mean, he's going to appear in Plan 9. But
it's all, like, stock footage at that point.
Stock footage. And I think he appears in another one. Was it Night of the Ghouls?
I think so, but I think that's another one where he has no speaking lines. It's a thing.
Or it was shot before and it was released later.
That might have been it. Because it's a very weird, I always find it interesting. And I think we talked about this when we talked about Last Jedi, right? When we get to see an actor's last performance, right? And the meta context and power that performance has on you as the audience member, knowing it's their last run at bat, right? When we were talking about, like, Carrie Fisher, this is the last time playing Princess Leia. And it feels like it made that performance more like maybe not wonderful, but more like transcendent, more like important, I guess. And seeing Lugosi's in Bride of the Monster almost has the same effect on me, where I feel it is a more transcendent and more whole performance. Mostly, one, because he gets to like run the show.
Yeah.
Right? He is far more of our leading man in this than anybody else. And I think it's also an interesting thing where you get to see him actually like work, where I think he wasn't given that opportunity for the last like 10 years of his life. But, you know, we can philosophize as to why Lugosi was such a good actor to begin with, which is a weird thing to quantify. But what we should talk about is, after this little speech, what Vornoff does to Strosky. And that is throw him to the fucking octopus. Where Strosky... Don't get me wrong. The home speech of Lugosi is Oscar-worthy. The battle of Strosky and the octopus is the Oscar moment of the film.
It's legendary.
It's legendary. Yeah. So we saw that the tentacles had a motor at one point, and I don't think they do anymore. Because he's just kind of falling on this rubber octopus monster. And I want you to imagine.
You mean when he sits on him?
Yes. I want you to imagine. It's an octopus-like model. Maybe the size of a beanbag chair. Like a large beanbag chair with some tentacles on it. And he's grabbing the tentacles and kind of wrestling around with them. Kind of throwing them on himself. Then he throws them off himself. And he's like, no, no. And he's screaming to the heavens.
And Bella's just smiling.
Screaming to the gods above to save him from the fate worse than death. It is wonderful. I cannot in good conscience think that anyone watched this and thought Ed Wood was going for something as a serious horror film. I feel he knew what he was doing, and he was making a campy like throwback to like 30s, 40s horror films, right?
Yeah.
That has to be what this was, because it's so kind of ridiculous, but in not a like incompetent way, in a very structured, I know what I'm doing, we're just having fun way.
I mean, it's a good time, you know?
It is a good time.
When do you get to wrestle with a fake octopus every day?
Not nearly as often as you want. Not nearly as often as you want. But we do get, and I believe at this point, again, the timeline of this movie is so weird because it's an hour long, but there is like 4 separate distinct plot things going on at any one time.
That all tie together.
But this is when Craig makes it to the house, right?
Yeah.
And he's coming in and he's gonna like save Lawton, right?
Yeah, him and Marty, his partner, have split up. I'm going to the house.
You check the lake.
You check the lake.
And he gets there, and I think they're going to perform an experiment on Lawton, right? But they manage to capture Craig, and I think they're going to do the test on Craig instead? Or are they still going to do it on Lawton? Because there's like a whole battle of wills with like Lobo at one point.
Well, yeah, because, you know, Dick comes in and he's like, all right, you know, I'm a detective, or, you know, lieutenant. He's something.
He's a sergeant.
He's been on the force for a while. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, we've got headshots of Dr. Vornoff. These are pretty they're pretty fire. I
love the headshots are so obviously old Lugosi headshots from when he was like 35, just breaking into Hollywood.
Not that young, no. Oh. But they are headshots of Bela Lugosi, and he's like, okay, let me just set these down on the fireplace. Boom! I found the trigger to open the trap door.
Convenient.
I'm in. He's like, I'm just as good at policing.
And
then he thinks he could take on Lobo. Which is like, dude, no.
I love the fight between Lobo and Craig so much because Tor Johnson was a legitimate
wrestler.
He was a legitimate professional wrestler at a time when like kayfabe was held very near and dear. So I guess for those who don't know, kayfabe was like a thing where you would keep up appearances around people who weren't in the business. So like, yeah, I'm a pro wrestler, but everything in the ring is real. And if anyone ever like challenged you on it, you'd be like, well, I could put you in a sleeper hold like I do in the ring. And the thing was, if you ever got into a match or whatever with like a civilian, you would like actually beat him up, right? you know, because that's like how it worked, you know. And I feel like he took that to the limit in the film, because he is like tearing off Craig's shirt. He is like throwing fucking full forearms at the back of his head. This guy is like bent over, like he's covering up. Tor Johnson is whooping the shit out of this man.
And they fight twice.
They do fight twice. I can't imagine the guy playing Craig really wanted to go back in for the second round. I can't imagine that.
They're like, I can't do it, boss. I can't.
Ed, please. Please. Tor's
You're gonna eat lightning and crab thunder. Get back in there, kid.
Ed, fucking Tor's built like a brick shithouse. Please. He's bigger than my fucking car. Also, like, that's another thing. Tor Johnson is fucking huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Craig gets the shit kicked out of him. And twice. But then we get into, like, the next little section here, right? Where Vornoff is going to do his experiments, and Lobo turns face on us all of a sudden, where he wants to save Lawton because of an Angora sweater.
And he found her. He found her, he saved her, so he's kind of turned into her protector. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, this thing of, no, you're not going to hurt her. I love her.
No.
I get it, you know, she's engaged to that guy, but I love her. I found her.
I Lobo. Me find her. She mine.
Yeah.
Tor Johnson communicates this without a single line of dialogue. Goddamn thespian here.
He's like, my voice is not that high. He goes, I have a thick, deep voice.
Oh, I have a thick, deep voice. Swedish angel name. But yeah, the thing is that this is another weird thing that's a very Ed Woodian auteurist thing, is that he touches her like sweater, right? And it's like the fabric is like, I assume Angora or whatever.
Yeah.
And that creates like a visceral like reaction in Lobo where he doesn't want her hurt because of it. And I wonder if it's like a thing where he was consciously putting this into the movie, because this is almost before the auteur theory was a real mainstream thing.
Yeah, it was just probably like a calling card, a signature.
Right? Mm-hmm. Like, it seems like a very odd, like, or maybe not an interesting thing for him to really harp on, because we saw this in Glenn or Glenda. Mm-hmm. But Lobo saves Lawton and straps Vornoff to the chair.
And Lobo's 6'3".
Lobo's only 6'3"?
He's 6'3".
Fucking was Dick Craig like 5'3"? What the fuck?
He may have been.
Jesus Christ.
I'll look around.
Yeah, look around. Do your research. But yeah, so Lobo straps Vornoff to the experiment table and flips the switch, and then Bela Lugosi turns into a stuntman, who's probably like 6'4".
I just love when he gets off the table and he's just massive. Like, oh shit!
It is hilarious to me how we were supposed to believe that 70-year-old Lugosi turned into this fucking NBA all-star all of a sudden. And him and Lobo get into a tiff.
I'll just say it. I was a little concerned. I was like, damn, he got off that table big.
Oh, I love how the only thing we see of Lugosi after this point is like single shots of him turning around in like a black background when he runs away. But yeah, we get this stuntman who is what we are seeing for the rest of the movie, right? And that sucks, because I really wish we had a little bit more Lugosi. Mm-hmm. Maybe a final like tragic monologue before he dies or something. But runs off. And now we have a climactic finale, right? The lab explodes, Lobo dies, Craig and Lawton are running away. They meet up with the cops, and they're chasing Vornoff, Atomic Superman Vornoff, down. And by the time they catch up to him, like a comically large boulder falls on him. And
well, I mean, the Dick, also pushes onto him. It's like, Dick, you could barely handle fighting Lobo, but you want me to believe that this perfectly round boulder, you're able to push it.
That's the size of a Ford F-150.
It's the size of the boulder from Raiders.
And he just poop, pushes it right over the edge.
And Atomic Superman is like, this really hurts.
And he falls in with the octopus, and we get another Oscar-worthy performance of being attacked by an octopus here. which is just so goddamn funny. And the movie wraps up with a very weird, like, oh, they played with they played with the atom, and now they are the brides of the atom, or something like that, where it's like a very
No.
anti-nuclear energy roundup.
No, it was something where they tried to be God and, kind of blew up in their face.
Oh, yeah. They tried to play God, and it just blew up in their face.
Get it? Because, the atom, the bomb. No?
We get...
Roll the credits? Okay, we're rolling the credits.
Yeah, because when the Old Willow place blows up in, like, an atomic bomb-style explosion...
And I like that Vornoff looks like, my house! I really have no home now.
No! That I only had 2 more payments.
I was so close to paying off that damn mortgage.
So close. And
do you know how damn high the rent is in Southern California?
I do love the fact that Ed Wood makes no qualms about all of his movies taking place in LA. Like Hollywood, USA. It's so good.
I was watching this, I'm like, I could believe that there would be a mad scientist in LA where he's creating atomic supermen and he has alligators and octopus and pythons. I could totally see it happening.
Well, yeah, that doesn't sound weird at all. This is LA. Anything can happen. But yeah, that is Bride of the Monster, the gist of Bride of the Monster. Any more thoughts on Bride of the Monster?
Well, I do have to redact what I said earlier. So this was Bella's last speaking role.
Yes.
The next project he was in, but it was a silent role, was The Black Sleep in 56.
Uh-huh.
Plan 9 from Outer Space in 57. And I guess it was an unfinished film called The Vampire's Tomb that never came out that he was in. And Lock Up Your Daughters that was released in 69 with earlier recycled footage of him.
I see.
So this is the last role of Bela Lugosi.
This is his last swing at bat.
This is his swan song.
Now, we'll talk about our thoughts on like the Ed Wood directorial strengths in this movie. But let's talk about that first. Lugosi, his last swing at bat. Do you think this is a good summation of his...
Dude knocked it out of the park.
You think so?
Yeah, because I mean, for having a movie with a budget, then not a budget, filmed in possibly 4 days, we're kind of throwing together the sets as we can because we just got kicked out of that studio for having no money. Bella was chomping the scenery the entire time.
Yeah, I think that's a thing that it's a thing that Lugosi was always a professional. I think that's something that even people in the later parts of his career, when he was like pretty addicted to his like drugs, would always say he was always a professional. He never half-assed anything. No,
when someone could have walked in and been like, oh, okay, so we had a budget and now we have nothing. I'm going to basically give you nothing. I'll show up, but I'm not here to, I need to be paid so I could play. Yeah. And in this, he's like, all right, I'll do it.
Yeah, it's my thing.
I think he only got paid $1,000 to do this.
Which at that point, you're doing it because you love the work.
Yeah.
And I think it's a thing where Lugosi always seemed like a guy who loved what he was doing, right? With Dracula, his most famous role, right? He was chewing up the scenery. He was having a grand old time. In, like, White Zombie, he's having a grand old time. Yeah. In, like, as the movies go, even when he did, like, Abbott and Costello,
Frankenstein, yes.
It always seemed like he was enjoying himself. And I think, he does Glen or Glenda, and he gets to just go buck wild and... He's like, this Ed Wood guy is just letting me do whatever I want. This is awesome. So I think it was so nice that at this stage of his life and career, that somebody looked at him and said, you could be the lead in the movie. You can carry this. Just because I think he still had that fire in him to be a leading man.
He's the Hungarian hunk. Of course he had that fire in him.
The man was 70-something in this. Calm down.
Doesn't matter. He still had it. It was the eyes.
The eyes. But yeah, I do think that this is probably a great representative role for his work, right? because you get to see him have heart in like his monologues. You get to see him have fun with the mad scientist shtick. You get to see him play up the like quote unquote sex appeal, I guess, when he does the hypnotism thing. So I do think this is a good swan song performance from him.
He gets to be Dracula one more time.
Yeah, he gets to be Dracula one more time. And I think that's kind of like the nicest thing about the movie. But let's talk about the other question that we have been bringing up going to be bringing up for the month. Ed Wood, good director. Was this a well-directed film?
I mean, compared to Glenn or Glenda, yeah, this feels like we stepped kind of light years ahead.
My thoughts exactly.
I don't know if it's the bigger budget, having more crew on set to kind of help you, writers. I think that was a point I had made last time. If he had more people in his corner, we could have really gotten him to focus and trudge along in the story, which I kind of feel like we do with this movie.
Well, that's something interesting because this is still a completely Ed Wood pen script. There is another writer on it, but that's only because the other writer gave him like story beats and stuff. It wasn't a thing the other guy wrote the script for him.
Yeah.
So it's still an Ed Wood pen script, and you can kind of tell it's still the dialogue's still a little funky, but it's not clunky anymore.
And I could totally see this being one of his novels, one of his pulp novels, where it's, the mad scientist, his lair, and he's got, a pet octopus, and he feeds people to the octopus. It's like, yeah, in your imagination, you could totally come up with, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I would say compared to Glenn or Glenda, right? Because I think I said this in Glenn or Glenda. Ed Wood could have gotten work as like a supporting actor. Right, when
he was good.
He was good in the movie as like just an actor, and I think he could deliver like naturalistic dialogue. I think he could have just gotten work being the guy's friend in like a slew of movies. But watching this, I think he could have gotten work making these kind of B horror movies, these kind of campy, like get him in, get him out, like Roger Corman-esque horror movies. I think Ed Wood probably was about 10 years too early to really hone in on a market that would have worked for him. I think he was making movies in
maybe the 60s?
In like the 60s as opposed to the 50s, I think he could have made a much healthier career for himself, before he gets like burned out, I guess, because he's burned out by the 60s.
Minus the alcoholism.
Yeah, like I think that's also a big problem is I think it's the reason why a lot of the retrospectives of Ed Wood kind of start getting a little fuzzy after Plan 9, because that's when the alcoholism gets really bad.
Yeah.
Because it's like the 60s and 70s is when he starts doing like stuff just for the money, and he gets really deep into like a really dark hole. So it's almost a thing where it's like, man, could he have just worked at a different era? Could have been more successful? I think that's probably the biggest problem, because this is actually I would say a pretty well made movie.
Yeah.
It's not bad. Like, I wouldn't say this is a bad movie. It's kind of campy and funky, but it's not like boring or awful. I enjoy it. Like, I would say I enjoyed it more than Glenn or Glenda in terms of a like movie viewing experience. I enjoy Glenn or Glenda more as like a what the fuck is this guy doing? Yeah, he is on a different wavelength.
I mean, this movie just feels more fleshed out.
Yeah.
Glenn or Glenda, it's like you had something there, but you were just kind of going in 5 different directions. And it's like, I'm trying to keep up with you. This one, it's like, okay, mad scientist wants to take over the world. Boom. Got it. We have, supporting characters that are coming in and they're going to, blow up his plans. Got it.
Yeah, it's a thing where it's like, oh, at least the plot of this movie is very streamlined and maybe not focused because there's a lot going on, but it makes sense from A to B to C. That's like the good part of Bride of the Monster.
Yeah.
The good part of Glenn or Glenda is it's just a guy cracking his brain open and just letting it come out on screen.
There's so many feels.
Lots of feels. But yeah, any last thoughts on Bride of the Monster?
Well, I'm glad, it kind of landed on our 200th because we both love Bela Lugosi.
Yes.
And, it's an
The
honor.
unofficial mascot.
Yes, it's an honor to talk about his last, full film and to see, just the amount of energy and spark that he still had when he was doing this.
Yes. And I do think that for our 200th episode, it's also nice that it's an Ed Wood movie. Because, we kind of like bad movies. And horror movies.
Sci-fi movies.
Sci-fi movies.
We love all movies.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. But before we sign out here, this is our 200th episode. So do you want to tell anybody some cool things that happened leading up to this 200th episode? Also, I can tell everyone why I sound awful. So I got like a sinus infection a couple days ago.
Me too.
We are just getting over it. But, we showed up to perform for you guys.
But I think you had it first, and then it went away, and then I got mine.
And then mine came back.
Yours came back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
Mine's like a dry cough, but yours is just like...
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying.
I'm gonna try my best to edit out all the coughing in this. There was a few, but yeah.
So if you're listening to this with headphones,
be careful.
I'm sorry, because his coughs are kind of like a T-Rex is chasing after you.
They're fine. They're fine. But yeah, so 200th episode, double sinus infection.
Woohoo!
We started doing with the first Scream movie.
We did. That's one, and it's still one of our highest listened to episodes.
Our 100th episode was Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Because we didn't realize it was our 100th episode. I don't even think we called it out until...
No. We knew it was our 100th episode, but it was a thing. And I know why we forgot to hype it up. We went to go get Lucille's before we recorded that, so I think we were like full in the itis by the time we started recording. We were just like, fuck.
Well,
we got too many biscuits.
Well, let's be real. We also didn't realize it was our 100th episode, or we didn't say anything until the Leatherface, until we did the next movie in the franchise.
I knew it was our 100th. It was just the thing, we ate too much, and it was like, once we finished recording, we're like, we never said anything about our 100th.
Always blaming the barbecue.
I mean, we don't play when we get barbecue.
We do not. But yeah, God, I'm trying to think, because we did a lot to get here.
I mean, I think in our first 5 episodes, Eraserhead is one of them.
Yes.
I think that might be episode 3 or 4.
It's something like that. Maybe 3.
My first introduction to David Lynch.
And you watched so many Lynch movies after that.
I mean, you really just kind of threw me in the deep end there.
If you could do Eraserhead, you can do anything.
And here we are, 200 later, and we've done a lot. I mean, the introduction of guests onto the podcast.
The introduction of this podcast has changed on at least 7 occasions.
Yeah, a little bit.
We changed up how the format of these episodes worked. If you go back and listen to the early episodes, they are
so structured.
And not gonna lie, not our best work.
No, and I mean lots of handwritten notes. I'll go home and I'll be like clearing out a drawer, and it's just notebooks of all my handwritten stuff from way back.
Yeah, and the amount of written down questions and Q&A stuff, it's all
we fly off the cuff now.
Yes. Man,
shoot from the hip.
Shoot from the hip, that's right. But yeah, looking back on our older episodes now, it's a little hard. I don't think I can actually go back farther than our 100th episode.
Only Greg goes back.
Greg does go back. Greg is like, I just need something to listen to when I'm working. I don't care.
He'll tell me that every now and then. He goes, hey, I just started listening to this one. I'm like, my God, why? And he goes, you can't stop me.
He just does it to annoy us. He'll go back and listen to Gangs of New York.
Oh,
which
God.
Is still
the worst episode.
Our worst episode that's ever been released, because I think
it was our most painful episode to record.
Yes, because we've had episodes that were bad that we didn't release. The main one is Mandy and Suspiria.
Well, we figured out those are vibe movies. We're going to figure out how to tie them together and do them together so we can actually have a full episode together.
Yes.
But that's how the podcast has been. It's been a learning experience, and we've, hit bumps along the way.
Yeah, I think it's also a thing we've gotten much better at just talking about a movie without having to
really dissect it and break it down.
Yeah, because that used to be a problem. We used to have a lot of problems doing comedies, because comedies were like, well, we'll just tell our favorite jokes from the movie. And then it's like, Yeah, this is a great 20-minute episode. We have nothing else to talk about because this
Yeah.
comedy has nothing else to talk about in it.
And then I showed you Arsenic and Old Lace, and I changed your life.
Great movie. Great movie. I can see why you love Cary Grant.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I've shown you great films. You used to hate movies over 90 minutes. Now you love Once Upon a Time in America.
I do. I mean, that's a really good movie.
It's very long, though.
It's very long, and I will still stand by, you got to commit time to it. It's not, I'm just going to, toss this movie on. No, I'm not doing anything for the rest of the day.
It's a movie that you need an hour prep beforehand, and you need an hour of decompression afterwards.
Yes.
Movie's only 4.5 hours. You need 6.5 hours to fully, grasp the film. It's the reason why it's, one of my favorite movies. After watching it on the podcast, it became one of my favorite movies. But it's just so weird. 200 episodes.
How the time flies.
How the time flies.
Because, we started this in 2020, and here we are.
Because we needed something to do during COVID.
Because I was losing my mind.
Weren't we all? That's
Yeah.
That's real people, everybody. Okay, we started this podcast during COVID because we could not stand, just not doing anything. It was awful.
No, you were still going to work.
Yeah, that was all I was doing.
Yeah, you were going to work. I had been laid off, so I was really doing nothing.
Yeah, and I'm sitting over there please, can you please lay me off? I would get paid more staying at home. Please, please.
And your mom was like, no.
No. Go to work, damn it. But yeah,
you were essential.
I suppose.
I was the fat that was cut off.
So rude. So
Just
rude.
trim it off.
You with your art degrees.
Oh, please, you have a couple of yourself.
Yeah, don't worry about it. But yeah, so 200 wonderful episodes. I'm excited. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you to all of you guys that listen to us, that have recently found us, that have been with us from the beginning.
And we will let you know we're always trying to get better. You can tell the progression if you listen to our early episodes versus now.
If you go back to the very beginning, you can see, wow, they're not as terrible as they were before.
We were rough. I would say the first 50 episodes are almost unlistenable.
We started this in your bedroom.
Yes.
Sharing a microphone. Throwing elbows for that microphone.
We did. We started recording this literally at my desk.
At your desk. And I had massive stage fright. I was like, I don't know how I could do this. It's just you. But it's not really, because it goes out to the world and anybody's listening. So I was like, this is kind of terrifying. And now it's, okay. We're all talking.
Yes. And that was okay, everybody, I'm going to let you know, that was the worst part of doing the podcast with Becky for the longest time, is she's like, so you're taking the lead on this episode. I'm like, what's that mean? You're going to talk for 90% of it, and I'm going to get mad when I don't get my word in edgewise.
And Dean was
what
like,
do you mean?
Bet.
Yeah, but then I would do the episode, and you're like, I didn't say anything in that episode. And I'm like, because you didn't want to say anything. You were scared most of the time.
I felt it. The worst would be when you would take my facts from my notes. You'd look over and be like, fascinating. Did you know? And I'm like, you bastard. I worked for that. I wrote that.
Yes, you did. You didn't hide your notes when we started recording. That was your fault.
So now, we don't play that game.
We do not. But yeah, so this episode 200. Listen from this point on. They will be getting better. And
if Dean survives.
If I survive. I don't know if I'll make it through the night. But if I do make it through the night, what movie are we going to be watching next week?
Next week, we are concluding Ed Wood month. I don't know if we could have done more movies. We probably could have. I think he had a few more up his sleeve.
He has more. The problem is the
quality.
Or
availability.
Availability is probably the other thing, because Glenda Glenda, Bride of the Monster, and the next movie we were talking about are the most readily available films of his. And there's also a thing where the last chunk of his career are pornographic films.
Yeah.
And it's a thing where we made the solemn promise to each other we would not do porno films on here.
Yeah. That doesn't seem like a hard ask, but
I still think it's funny when we get people ask me oh, are you gonna do Cannibal Holocaust? Are you gonna talk about sleazy exploitation films or Salo? And I'm like no. I like being able to sleep at night. I grew up on a farm, but it wasn't that hardcore, guys.
You didn't grow up on a farm.
I was around farms a lot.
You visited.
Every week. But
yeah.
So,
So next week, we're concluding Ed Wood Month with one of the most talked about films of all time.
The deciding factor of is he a good director or not.
Considered the worst film of all time.
Yep.
We're talking about Plan 9 from Outer Space.
That's right. Plan 9 from Outer Space. 1957. Has Criswell in it. Vampira. Tor Johnson again. Bela Lugosi, kind of.
Yeah.
It is it's going to be interesting. Bunny Breckenridge is also in it.
Yep, that's right.
This is a movie that has loomed large, I think, for every movie podcast, right? You do Citizen Kane and you do Plan 9 from Outer Space, right?
I feel we've done it right because we haven't done Citizen Kane yet. But we are going to do Plan 9.
We are. And Plan 9 from Outer Space, you've seen it before?
I've seen clips of it. I haven't seen the full...
You've seen the funny flub bits of it?
Yeah. I haven't seen the full beast that is Plan 9.
I see. I have seen Plan 9 from Outer Space in its entirety once. And I am very interested to see if it has aged better in the second watch.
I'm sure it's available on YouTube.
Oh yeah, most of the Ed
Tubi.
Wood canon is like completely free public domain stuff on YouTube.
I mean, I did love that, I watched Glenn or Glenda on Tubi, and you're like, why didn't you just watch it on YouTube? And I was like, well, shit. So I looked up Bride of the Monster on YouTube, and I love that right next to it was the buy or rental version of it.
Yes.
And then the free version. And I was like,
yes.
Well, free.
The best part is the buy or rental version is like the colorized one from like the 80s or 90s.
No.
So it's, yes. So that is one of the things that is astounding to me. When people are like, dude, Ed Wood didn't know how to shoot a goddamn movie. You see this, and they show like clips from the colorized version.
And it's like, no, you could obviously tell where it's slipping in between color and black and white.
And then you see the black and white ones. I'm like, oh, there's like shadows going on
composition.
Here. There's composition here. Like, yeah, okay, it's like pretty like basic, but it's there. So it's, yes. But that is great. You can find almost all these Ed Wood movies like completely free on YouTube. Most of them are public domain.
Mm-hmm.
Or the company that owns them just like laps on the rights that they don't exist anymore, which is more likely. But yeah, I'm very excited for Plan 9 from Outer Space. Very excited.
Same. It's going to be something. But if you want to listen to us on a different platform than you currently are, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube.
You can go to our YouTube channel, The Film Vault. That is The Film Vault on YouTube. You can like, comment, and subscribe to the slideshow video versions of this podcast there. And on that note, this was going to be a video podcast, but
Dean is dying. So if all things go well, we might actually have an actual video podcast posted next week for Plan 9 from Outer Space. We can only hope. Should we try to make some flying saucers with paper plates?
I would love that. But if you wanted to maybe check us out on social media, where can they go?
You can go to the Film Club Podcast on Instagram, where we post upcoming episodes, guest pictures, random adventures we go on. And yeah, because I think next week, if this is right, we should be at Midsummer Scream.
I believe so. We so don't record these way in advance or completely out of order.
We so do not.
But yeah,
it looks like, according to my calendar, we should be at Midsummer Scream. So definitely give us a follow. We'll be posting pictures. I'll try to incorporate some videos. We do go and say hi to the Lugosi family when we visit every year, so you never know what could happen on our Instagram.
Yeah, and if you see us at Midsummer Scream, say hi. Bring us presents.
You don't have to bring us presents.
Bring us presents.
Maybe some cold water, because it gets hot.
Yes. But with that,
we'll see you next week at the Film Club.
Have a good week, everybody.